Amanda, I hope the $1,500 I give you monthly has made your life easier. The owner of that low, resonant voice was my grandfather, who sat at the far end of the table. It was Thanksgiving Day. My grandfather, who was usually extremely busy as a businessman and rarely showed his face at family gatherings, had unusually decided to join the dinner this year. Because of that, my father, Jonathan Brooks, my mother, Karen Brooks, and my younger sister, Madison, were desperately acting as if they were welcoming royalty. There was the highest quality turkey, mashed potatoes lavishly filled with truffles, and a vintage wine from the year my grandfather was born. The living room was filled with the savory scent of the dishes and the cheerful laughter of my family. Being able to see my grandfather again after such a long time was a great joy for me. To tell the truth, ever since I left home, I had never attended Thanksgiving at my family home. I originally had no intention of coming that day either, but I couldn't refuse my grandfather's earnest invitation when he said, "I'll come this year. So Amanda, you come with me." And so I crossed the threshold for the first time in years. However, that perfectly staged atmosphere and my family's insincere behavior made me feel unbearably uncomfortable. As my father and the others tried to keep my grandfather in a good mood, the occasional glances they shot at me carried an unspoken pressure telling me not to say anything unnecessary. Eventually, the main dish was cleared away and pumpkin pie with a sweet spice aroma and coffee were brought out. Then the family's tension loosened slightly and a relaxed atmosphere began to spread. My grandfather quietly placed his coffee cup back on its saucer and suddenly fixed his gaze directly on me. In his eyes was a pure sense of concern for his granddaughter, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. "Amanda, haven't you lost a little weight? How are you feeling? You shouldn't push yourself too hard." The unexpected kindness made the tension in my heart loosen just a little. I gave him the best smile I could and answered as brightly as possible. "Thank you, Grandpa. I'm doing well. And if you'd like, you can come visit my place sometime." My grandfather narrowed his eyes with delight and nodded, saying, I would love to." And then he continued, "Have you gotten used to living alone? Becoming independent is no easy task." My grandfather went on with casual conversation in a gentle tone, but then, as if remembering something, he added more words. "Well, as long as you have a solid financial foundation, I suppose you can live with some peace of mind. With my monthly support, you don't have to worry about rent and your life should be much easier, right?" The sound of cutlery stopped, and every gaze in the room pierced into me, sitting small in the corner of the table. I couldn't keep up with the sudden question, and I barely managed to squeeze out my voice. "What are you talking about, Grandpa?" My question echoed emptily through the tense silence. If it's about that money, you don't need to worry." My father quickly cut in, interrupting my words with a swift tone. He didn't even bother wiping the sweat forming on his forehead as he forced a fixed smile toward Grandpa. "Amanda can be a little naive about the world, you know? Since she's not good at managing money, we simply took responsibility and handled it for her." Those words were like oil poured onto an open flame, making my grandfather's expression grow even harsher. "Manage it, you say?" His voice was low, tightly suppressing his anger. "Then answer me, Jonathan. If Amanda is supposed to be the one benefiting from this, why does she look as though she knows nothing about it? Can you show me proof right here, right now, that my money is truly being used for this child just as you claim?" The moment my father stumbled for words, my mother suddenly cut in, her voice trembling as though she were playing the tragic heroine. "Dad, how can you say something so cruel? You know how much we worry about Amanda, don't you? She's always been a difficult child, and we've been doing everything we can to protect her." But my grandfather was no longer fooled by her theatrics. He cut her off and exclaimed, "Be quiet, Karen. It was you who begged me for financial help in the first place." The air in the living room grew even colder. He then continued, "Was it 5 winters ago? With your voice trembling on the phone, you told me this?" Amanda left home without listening to our advice. "She's sick, and we're worried she won't be able to live alone. We can't sleep at night." I believed those words. I believed in your concern for your daughter and started sending the money. And now look. All I hear from this child is, "What are you talking about?" Explain to me what is going on. Exposed by the truth, her face turned deathly pale and she was left speechless. When she looked around as if begging for help, Madison, who had been silently picking at her nails until then, suddenly shouted in a shrill voice, "Grandpa, stop it already! You're going too far!" Madison stood up and glared at me. "You have no idea how much Mom and Dad have struggled. Amanda, you're always like this. Always talking about your own pain and suffering and never once thinking about how much everyone else has supported you. Even if you got the money, you just blow it all on meds or whatever nonsense you waste money on. That's why Mom and Dad have been managing it for you. What's wrong with that?" Those words became the final trigger. Madison knew. She knew exactly what our parents had been doing, benefited from it, and helped deceive me all this time. I hadn't even realized a sound had escaped my lips. "That's a lie." Everyone turned to look at me. "Liar." Shaking, I stared straight at every one of them. "I never said I wanted to leave this house. It was you both, Mom, Dad, who told me to get out. You abandoned me." In response to my anguished cry, my mother pretended to collapse into tears and shrieked back at me. "What a terrible thing to say, Amanda. We would never tell you to leave. Your illness is making your memories confused." My father echoed her words, glaring at me as though I had lost my mind. "That's right. We refuse to indulge your delusions any longer." Their blatant denial burned away even the faintest trace of affection that had remained in my heart. Suppressing my trembling, I answered coldly, "My memories are confused? No, I remember it perfectly. The day I was thrown out of this house, left alone in the cold night with nowhere to go, I remember exactly who saved me." I had never forgotten the despair of that night, the cold that sank into my bones, not even for a single day. It was simply impossible to forget. Keeping my glare fixed on all of them, I revealed the truth I had replayed in my heart countless times since that night. I ran to Paige's house, and she took care of me for 2 weeks until I found an apartment. Her parents also remember how I showed up sobbing in the middle of winter, with nothing but the clothes on my back. They were furious, saying, "How could any parent throw out their daughter in the middle of the night?" If you want, I can call Paige right now and put her on speaker. She can testify very clearly whether I ran away for fun that night, or whether I was thrown out. Mom's face stiffened. I continued, "Most of my paycheck disappeared instantly. Rent, living expenses, treatment for my chronic illness, medication. I didn't have a single cent left. Whenever I was truly desperate for money, I worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour diner after my day job, sacrificing my sleep just to survive." Speaking the words alone brought the memories flooding back. The lingering smell of old grease stuck to the diner's kitchen, the heaviness in my limbs at dawn, the humiliation of counting a handful of coins and tips. All of it felt as if it were still clinging to my skin. And while I was working myself to the bone like that, what were you doing? I was shocked to see this house again today. The kitchen is remodeled, there's a brand new large refrigerator, and outside a shiny new SUV. When I begged for help, you ignored me, saying you had no money. So where exactly did you get the money for all this luxury? My parents exchanged glances, panicking, and muttered helplessly, They moved their mouths as if searching desperately for excuses, but the words got stuck in their throats and nothing meaningful came out. Then I turned my gaze to Madison. "And that's not all. Last summer, the 3 of you took a trip to Hawaii to celebrate Madison's high school graduation, didn't you? I saw it on your Instagram, Madison. You were laughing on the beach and you looked like you were having the best time of your life." At this direct accusation, Madison's face flushed bright red. "That's only because you were sick and you wouldn't have been able to travel anyway." She tried to make another excuse, but under Grandpa's icy stare, she swallowed her words. She only looked down in embarrassment. She too was an accomplice in this deception. Grandpa watched the ugly argument with a cold, unblinking gaze. Eventually, he quietly said, "That's enough," and took control of the room. Grandpa pulled his smartphone from his pocket and began making a call. Everyone in the room held their breath at his unexpected action. "It's me. Sorry to bother you on Thanksgiving. I need something urgently. Please send the full transaction history of the transfers I made every month from my personal account to Karen's, from 5 years ago until now, as a PDF to my email immediately. I want to confirm it here and now." His voice was quiet, but carried an undeniable authority that allowed no refusal. My father shouted in panic, "Wait, what are you doing?" but Grandpa only shot him a cold look and did not respond. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock. After what felt like an eternity, Grandpa's phone vibrated softly with an email notification. He put on his glasses, opened the email, and began slowly scrolling through the attached file. Then he slowly lifted his face from the screen and spoke, each word sharp as a blade. Transfer date, the 3rd of every month. Recipient Karen, your personal account. Amount, $1,500. And in the memo section, it clearly says this, Amanda's monthly support. He paused, then held the phone out across the table toward my parents, as though presenting irrefutable evidence. 60 times. For 5 years, without missing a single month, my goodwill reached you faithfully. But Amanda knew nothing. She never received this money? Not once in 5 years. So, explain it to me, Jonathan Karen. Where did my $90,000 disappear to? The total, $90,000, a specific and crushing figure, pressed heavily onto the atmosphere of the living room. It was no longer an amount that could be explained away with excuses. My father's face was twisted as if he had been punched in the gut, and my mother finally broke down, choking on sobs. Their faces were flushed red with guilt and shame. No excuse, no lie, could stand up against this immovable evidence. An unbearable silence dominated the room. My father finally forced out a voice, but it was neither an excuse nor a justification. Just one unbearably weak word. I'm sorry. That single word was the moment he admitted his guilt. When Grandpa heard it, he shook his head once in deep disappointment and quietly rose from his seat. He no longer spared them a single glance and gently placed his hand on my shoulder. Let's go, Amanda. There's no reason to stay here any longer. I nodded wordlessly and stood up. Leaving my stunned parents and sister behind, we turned our backs on them. Thus, the Thanksgiving dinner came to an end. The following weekend, Grandpa called for me, and I visited his home. Seated deep in the leather sofa of his study, Grandpa let out a long, heavy sigh the moment he saw my face. I'm sorry, Amanda. I should have uncovered the truth much earlier. This is my responsibility. His voice was thick with self-reproach. To be honest, it never occurred to me to doubt them at all. But when Tyler came to visit about a month ago and started talking about them, I began to sense something was off. Tyler was my mother's younger brother. In other words, my uncle. Grandpa spoke with a bitter expression, recalling their conversation. Tyler told me they were invited to dinner at Karen's place, and he felt like he was stepping into a movie star's mansion. Apparently, my mother held a sort of show-off party, inviting Tyler's family over to celebrate the completion of the kitchen remodel. Tyler was puzzled as he told me, the flooring was imported marble from Italy and the refrigerator was top-of-the-line commercial grade. I know Jonathan's company is doing only moderately well, so where did all that money come from? Don't tell me you have been secretly helping them out. Grandpa exhaled deeply, his face heavy with regret. The moment I heard Tyler's words, a terrible suspicion flashed through my mind. I was giving help. Yes, but that help was meant for you, Amanda. But what if the money wasn't going to you, but straight into their pockets? Tyler's description of their extravagant lifestyle would suddenly make perfect sense. That was the first time I realized the frightening possibility. I should have confirmed things with you much sooner. I thought I was helping you, but instead I ended up letting you suffer for 5 years. I quietly shook my head. It's not something you need to apologize for, Grandpa. If you hadn't spoken up, I might have lived my whole life without ever knowing the truth. I'm grateful to you. And then, for the first time, I confessed something I had kept buried in my heart. Ever since the day I was thrown out of the house, I fought with everything I had. When I realized I couldn't rely on my family, I decided I had no choice but to become strong. Strong enough to wear armor made of iron. I worked day and night, studied business through the pain, and 3 years ago, I started my own small consulting firm. Grandpa's eyes widened in astonishment. At first, all I had were tiny jobs, and there were so many times I thought I would break. But I never gave up. Now things are finally starting to move in the right direction. My clients are growing, and I'm financially stable enough that I don't need anyone's help anymore. I continued in a calm voice as I looked out the window. Of course, I lost a lot along the way. But because of that hardship, I was able to become truly independent. I gained a strength that belongs only to me, something no one can ever take away. When Grandpa finished listening to my words, he nodded deeply, his expression filled with both relief and pride. I see. You've grown into a fine woman, Amanda. You truly have worked hard, all on your own. His eyes glistened with faint tears, but his expression soon shifted into something far more severe. But that doesn't mean Jonathan and Karen's crimes can simply disappear. While you were struggling this much, they were stealing your money and living in luxury. This has gone far beyond the bounds of something that can be forgiven as a family matter. Grandpa spoke in a resolute voice. I intend to take formal legal action against them. This is a crime. They need to understand the weight of what they've done under the full force of the law. However, this will also pull you into the fight. I cannot proceed without your consent. Amanda, tell me what you want. At his words, I nodded quietly. I feel the same way, Grandpa. They need to face what they've done without looking away. Grandpa gave a heavy, solemn nod. Very well. Then we act at once. There is no need to show them mercy. With that, Grandpa reached into his coat without hesitation and pulled out his smartphone. He tapped the screen a few times and held it to his ear. Even though it was a Sunday afternoon, the person on the other end picked up after just one ring. Cooper? It's me. Sorry to disturb you on a holiday, but I need you to move quickly on an urgent case. Grandpa's voice had transformed entirely. Gone was the warmth he showed me a moment ago. In its place was the cold, commanding tone of a businessman standing at the forefront of his field. Yes, it's a lawsuit. The defendants are Jonathan Brooks and Karen Brooks. Yes, my daughter and her husband show no leniency whatsoever. The charges are embezzlement and fraud. The victim is my granddaughter, Amanda. The amount totals $90,000. Looking straight at me, Grandpa continued issuing instructions to Cooper on the other end of the line, his voice calm but carrying a chilling edge. As evidence, I already have the transfer records from my personal account, but we need definitive proof of what they used the money for. Begin the investigation immediately and trace every one of their financial assets. Bank transactions, credit card statements. Yes, find the source of the funds for their home remodel and the new car. Gather overwhelming evidence so they cannot escape. Yes, proceed. Prepare the complaint as soon as possible and slap it directly onto their doorstep. When the call ended, Grandpa placed his smartphone on the table and spoke to me with unwavering conviction. Cooper is the lawyer I trust most. He'll handle everything flawlessly. With this, the die has been cast. And so, our resolve began moving forward, given form through the law. About a month later, my smartphone began ringing violently. The screen displayed 3 letters. Mom. I declined the call once, but it kept coming again and again with relentless persistence. When I finally gathered the resolve to press the answer button, her sobbing and piercing voice exploded through the receiver. Amanda, please. Talk to Grandpa. Beg him to withdraw the lawsuit. We're really sorry. We're truly repenting. If this continues, we'll lose everything. Please, Amanda, I'm begging you. The moment I heard her desperate pleading and the word family, my heart became strangely cold and still. With a voice stripped of all emotion, sharp as ice, I said, Repenting? Is that how someone who's repenting behaves? What? Help you because we're family? I can't believe you can say that. You're not trembling because you regret what you did to me. You're scared of losing your comfortable life and your social image, aren't you? She fell silent for a second, as if the truth had struck her hard, then rushed into rapid excuses. No, we really are reflecting on what we did. We can talk it through. Talk it through? It's too late for that. Grandpa called the lawyer because you deceived me for 5 years, ignored my suffering, and spent my money on luxury. This isn't something that can be solved with reflection. This is the consequence of what you chose. Amanda, how can you take your own family to court? At her voice full of self-pity, I finally pulled out the thorn that had been lodged in my chest for so long and thrust it back at her. Do you remember 2 years ago, when I called you crying because I couldn't afford the renewal fee for my apartment? I needed help more than anything. I threw away my pride and begged you. And what did you say? Handle your own problems. Stop relying on us. Don't expect us to bail you out. Then you coldly hung up on me. On the other end, I heard her inhale sharply. Her silence confirmed everything. So now I'm going to return those exact same words to you. Handle your problems yourselves. With that, I ended the call. Her scream-like voice was cut off mid-sentence. Immediately afterward, my smartphone went wild with incoming messages. From Jonathan, "You ungrateful brat, who do you think raised you?" From Madison, "You're a horrible person. I can't believe you're suing your own family." I didn't respond to any of them. One by one, I blocked their numbers. And then the trial began. The atmosphere in the courtroom was cold and solemn. In the high-ceiling room, even the judge's single cough echoed with heavy gravity. My parents, who were seated across from the witness stand, looked nothing like the arrogant figures I saw on Thanksgiving night. Jonathan sat with his shoulders slumped as if swallowed by his suit, and Karen stared blankly into the void, her face pale. Madison, sitting beside them, had lost her former glow entirely and kept her head down, trembling. In contrast, my heart was strangely calm. Grandpa sat beside me, and next to him sat Cooper, our attorney, both quiet and composed. All we were waiting for was the proper end to be delivered. Cooper began presenting the evidence one piece at a time, calmly and methodically. He showed the 60 months of bank statements documenting the transfers from Grandpa's account into Karen's personal account. He pointed out the unambiguous note in the remarks section, Amanda's monthly rent. But the most decisive evidence came from Karen's account records. A few days after each deposit from Grandpa on the 3rd of every month, withdrawals for a car loan or credit card payments for vacation expenses were made, as if perfectly timed. There was not a single line indicating any transfer made to me. The defense attorney weakly argued that it had simply been financial help within the family, and that there had been no malicious intent, but Cooper immediately cut him down. "No malicious intent, you say? Then please explain this." The defendants hid the fact that they had thrown Amanda out of the house, lied that they needed help because they were worried about their daughter, used the money meant for her survival for their own luxuries, and all the while coldly rejected Amanda's pleas for help. Where in this series of actions are we expected to find goodwill? The courtroom fell silent. Everyone understood the ugly truth of this family. When the closing arguments ended, the judge opened his mouth to announce the verdict. His voice carried no trace of emotion, sounding instead like the voice of the law itself. The defendants, Jonathan Brooks and Karen Brooks, are found, beyond any reasonable doubt based on the submitted evidence, to have committed unlawful misappropriation of funds belonging to the plaintiff, Amanda Brooks. Therefore, the defendants are hereby ordered to return the full amount of $90,000 misappropriated over the course of 5 years, plus an additional 5% annual interest for delayed damages. A sharp sound echoed as the gavel struck. That dry sound signaled my severance from the past. Jonathan hung his head in defeat, and Karen quietly collapsed in tears. I did not look at them. I kept my gaze fixed straight ahead. The trial ended and several months passed. Into my personal bank account was deposited $90,000, along with the accumulated interest, bearing the full weight of the 5 years that had been stolen from me. I used a portion of the money to give Grandpa a heartfelt gift for everything he had done for me. The rest I invested back into the consulting company I had poured my life into building, and saved for the peaceful future I was finally able to envision. It was no longer money I needed to survive. It was proof, undeniable and official, that my justice had been recognized and my dignity restored. With Grandpa's support, I finally received the assistance that should have been mine from the beginning, and I severed myself completely from the hateful past. I had begun to walk forward powerfully into a new life that belonged only to me, where no one could ever exploit me again. One bright Sunday afternoon, I sat with Grandpa on his home terrace, the two of us drinking tea together. As the quiet hours passed, he hesitated slightly before sharing an update about them. Jonathan and Karen. According to Grandpa, my parents had sold the house to pay the damages ordered by the court. The newest high-end refrigerator they bought while ignoring my pleas for help. The shiny SUV in the driveway. All of it. Every piece of their life built on appearances and lies had been sold off. Now they are living in a small, old apartment on the other side of town. Jonathan had lost his professional credibility, and Karen, completely worn down, rarely left the house anymore. "How is Madison?" I asked quietly. Grandpa's expression darkened slightly. With no financial support from her parents, she can no longer live the extravagant life she used to. She's working at a nearby supermarket now, trying to get by. And from what I hear, she blames Jonathan and Karen for everything that has gone wrong in her life and screams at them every day. The kingdom they had built on illusions had collapsed entirely from within. Even hearing all of this, no joy or satisfaction rose within me. Only a deep, quiet sorrow, a sense of the emptiness of what their greed had ultimately brought them. I set my cup down and looked up at the sky. "It's fine now," I said. "Whatever happens to them, it has nothing to do with my life anymore. All I can do is move forward." Hearing those words, Grandpa smiled at me gently.